Today I want to talk about forgiveness. And forgiving in some cases is not easy. When someone steps on your shoe, you can forgive easily, but when someone does something atrocious, it will require the grace of God to forgive. There is a story I know of a certain young man who the mom gave birth to this young man when she was still in a high school. And the mom went to the city, left the child in the village. The mom married another man without disclosing that she already has a child, and went ahead and even got other children with this other man. It's only much later that this husband to this woman got to know that the wife had another child before they got married, and the child is in the village. But by this time this young man was already grown up, had a lot of bitterness towards the mother because of how the mom had abandoned him in the village, how the mom had also got other children. And this young man grew up with a lot of bitterness, recalling the many times that the mom came to the village, ignored him, and later on the mom tried her level best to reach out to this young man. By now he was now an adult, and this young man found it so hard, so hard to forgive the mother. As years went by, the mom fell sick, and when this young man was still writhing and seething in that bitterness and trying to come to that point of forgiving the mother passed on. It's a very sad story, and it's a true story. And you can understand what this guy had gone through with all that rejection from the mother. But the problem is, there was a stronghold of dwelling in what the mother did not do. And many times that's what we do. We dwell in the mistakes and the things that people said. What the people did to you, how they insulted you, how they mocked you. I was talking to some young men, not really young men, let me say. By now they are fathers, married, and have big children and everything. But they were serving under a certain man of God. And this man of God much later went to be with the Lord. I will not disclose names because the man of God is known. But when they were serving under this man of God, they did not have the best of experiences. The man of God had anger issues, as from what many people were saying. And some of these guys had their own traumas. They had their own stories, and they were not able to thrive in that environment. So they left the ministry. But the problem is, they left with a lot of bitterness. And wherever they went, they were just letting out that bitterness. Wherever they went, they continued being bitter. But something was happening on the other end. This man of God apparently got to know what was his mistake, and with time he was changing, to a point that after many years, when these men who were serving under this man of God decided to go and visit one of the pastors who was still serving under this man of God, when they went to visit this pastor and they told him, we left the ministry because of this and this and this, and the pastor said, I understand, because we were there. I was also there with you. We were suffering under that issue. But you have to understand that the man of God has changed. He was young at that time. He made his own mistakes, but he's a changed man. He's not the same person he was. And there was a disparity, because this man of God got to know his mistakes and he changed. These other young men, right now they're not so young, they continued with the bitterness over years and years, years in, years out. They were still bitter and more bitter and more bitter. They were not changing. And that is what bitterness does. It holds you. It holds you to those things that people said, the things that they did, and you are unable to move on. There's a story similar to that in the Bible about someone who was called Philemon. He had a slave by the name Onesimus, and this slave did atrocious things. From research, it's like he stole something. He stole things from Philemon and ran away. So apparently this slave called Onesimus got arrested, and he was in the same prison where Paul was. Talk of divine connections, because Paul knew Philemon. So Paul fathered Onesimus. He converted Onesimus, he fathered Onesimus, and Onesimus changed. The Bible says in the book of Philemon, chapter 1, verse 10, I appeal to you, now this is Paul writing to Philemon, I appeal to you for my spiritual child Onesimus, whom I have fathered in the faith while a captive in these chains. Once he was useless to you, but now he is indeed useful to you as well as to me. I have sent him back to you in person. That is like sending my very heart. This talks of two things. That Paul had walked with Onesimus so closely that Onesimus became so dear to Paul's heart. That's number one. Number two, when he says like sending my very heart, is also saying that Onesimus had become so intimate with Paul that he shared the heart of Paul. He was no longer that thief. He was no longer that liar, that cheat or anything, but he had completely changed. And he had a new heart. He was like the heart of Paul. And you see in verse 18, Paul says, but if he has wronged you in any way or owes you anything, charge that to my account. I, Paul, write this with my own hand. I will repay it in full, not to mention that you yourself owe to me even your own self as well. That is the Amplified Version. So Paul was telling Philemon, forgive Onesimus for what he's done. He's a changed man. It's when I'm sending him back to Israel as if I'm sending myself. There's actually a place that he says, if you continue reading the book of Philemon, he says, welcome him as if you're welcoming me. If he's done you any wrong, forgive him, charge it to my account. And also remember that you owe me because I'm like your spiritual authority. And that is what Jesus says. Forgive them. Because even you yourself, you've done mistakes and I have forgiven you. It's not easy to forgive, and that's why you run. You see, this is Paul writing a letter to Philemon to accept Onesimus. That is grace. That's how grace works. God comes before and he gives you the strength and the grace to forgive this person. Now, if you do your research, Philemon accepted Onesimus, and Onesimus came back no longer as a slave but as a brother. And the Bible says that later on they worked together to a point that Onesimus even became a bishop of Ephesus, and he was even martyred for the Christian faith. So sometimes when we dwell on the past, if Philemon dwelt in the mistake that Onesimus had done, oh, he done this, oh, he had done that, oh, he insulted me, oh, he stole this from me, oh, he did this and that. If he dwelt on that thing, he would have sabotaged a whole destiny in the city of Ephesus. Because this person, Onesimus, who was now that thief, now became that bishop. He saved millions, he saved people in Ephesus. And let me say, whatever Onesimus did has continued, has compounded and compounded to our season, to our generation. So you can say because of what Onesimus did, billions have been saved. Imagine sabotaging a destiny of billions because someone stole from you, because someone said something to you. So you've held that bitterness, and you cannot forgive that person, and you cannot welcome them back just because they did this and that. Yet God is the one who's telling you, I want you to welcome this person back. I want you to forgive this person. I want you to give this person another chance. And that is what bitterness does. And that's what the enemy does. Many destinies have been sabotaged. Some have been stagnated. Some have been delayed just because of bitterness and unforgiveness. I'm not saying it's easy to forgive. It is not easy to forgive. But there is grace that can help you forgive. You just need to run to God and tell God, I am struggling with unforgiveness. And He's going to give you the grace. Think about Jesus Christ. And this thing just baffles my mind completely. He's there, he has a crown of thorns on his head, he's being blindfolded by the same people he's been sent to save. Imagine, put yourself in that situation. You've been sent to these people to help them or to be a blessing to them, and they reject you. They insult you, they mock you. That time he has a crown of thorns on his head, which represents depression. Maybe at that time you're going through your own challenges in life, and the people you've been sent to be a blessing to, they are mocking you. They're insulting you. At the cross, instead of cursing those people, Jesus says, Lord, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. They don't know what they are doing. Such a heart of Jesus to forgive the people who are insulting him, instead of saying, you guys, I'm doing all this, I'm suffering all this for you, then you're still insulting me. Then all of you just burn in hell. He didn't say that. That's what we do many times when people hurt us and we know that we have good intentions. We want to curse them. And you see what happened when Jesus forgave. And what has happened? It has compounded to billions and billions of people being saved. Imagine if Jesus at that point got so offended that he cursed those people. Paul says in the book of Philippians, chapter 3, verse 13, brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. That is one verse that blesses me so much, that I hold on to when I know that I need to forgive someone. You know, striving for what is ahead, forgetting. I'll forget what they said, forget what they did, but look ahead. What are the possibilities of this relationship? What are the possibilities of this forgiveness? Maybe in that forgiveness, a partnership can come. And that partnership can do great wonders in this earth. It can change generations. It can impact people. So I cannot hold onto a grudge I cannot hold onto those thoughts of what you said or what you did. Forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead. And as I end with Isaiah chapter 43, verse 18 and 19. Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I'm doing a new thing, now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. That heart that is so hard, that person that is so ruthless and atrocious, who is like a desert, God can transform them to be a river. I will make a way in the wilderness. That person who you think cannot change, God can make a way for them to change. And rivers in the desert. That person who is just something else can become something beautiful. And God says, forget the former things. Behold, I'm doing a new thing. God can change that person. You just need to take time and forgive them. Ask God to give you the grace. Ask Jesus to give you the grace. Because in that forgiveness, that forgiveness, maybe in that forgiveness lies something so great, lies an empire, lies a ministry, lies a partnership, lies something so amazing. And the devil knows this. And so the devil will hold you to what that person said or what that person did. But right now it's time to go to that point and lay that thing in the altar of God and tell God, God, this person said this person did this, I surrender it to you. And let the grace of God, the same grace that made Jesus say, forgive them, they do not know what they did. The same grace that made Jesus go back to Peter and call him and tell him to serve him, despite Peter betraying him. Because Peter betrayed him, it's not only Judas. Judas betrayed, he hanged himself. Peter betrayed, he went to fish. He threw his hand in ministry. And maybe you are that person who you left the faith, you left church, you left ministry because of a disappointment or two, or maybe a mistake that you did. And Jesus is the same person who forgives and calls you back and says, I still need you to serve me. I have forgiven you, and I will give you the grace to love me. That's what he did to Peter. Do you love me? He asked him 3 times. Do you love me? Peter was asking, Peter, do you agape me? And Peter will say, I phileo you, if you do the translations, if you actually do the research. And what Peter was saying, I love you, but not as much. And Jesus said, one time is going to come when you will love me so much that you will die for me. I've just preached that verse, And that is what Jesus does. He gives people second chances. So today I'm encouraging someone who's struggling with forgiving someone. Ask God to give you the grace to forgive that person, because you don't know what lies after this. This is Frank G. Minor. Be blessed.